Hello, film world. I am the Patric, your host of Tomorrow Comes Movies, the podcast that, spoiler alert, talks movies. And each episode, I'll be joined by a guest co-host from a roster of movie fans to varying degrees. Welcome back, and thank you so much for tuning in. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm going to look very different after this intro. I'll look the same in the outro, because when I had done this episode originally, I had done two back to back and I forgot to film the intro and outro. So that's why I may look different. For those who are listening to the podcast, not going to notice anything outside of maybe some more announcements that are a little bit more up to date. So what do I have before we start this episode? I'm going to reiterate the action series. We got a few more still in the can, still dealing with some audio issues. That's why it's taking a little while to come out. Looks like July will be where we wrap it up. Hidden Gems of Cinema, still going. I have a few in the can. Anybody who I have contacted with, by the time this comes out, I should already have sent you a message. I need to take a 2 to 3 week hiatus because I got a lot on my plate. I got a lot of episodes that need to come out. I need to get those going. And also, I'm a little bit creatively and personally drained. So I need to recharge the batteries a little bit here. So need to get out a little bit. I've been kind of basically acting classes, editing. I don't do anything else. I love it, don't get me wrong, but I need to get out for a little bit. So need to go outside. So that's why I need to recharge. And also, truth be told, I'm going to be editing regardless because I need to get these episodes out. So no worries to anybody who's already chosen a film for Hidden Gems of Cinema. We're still going to do it. No problems. Just give me a little bit of time, and I appreciate your understanding and patience. And so what else? I don't know if there's anything else. I mean, still got some things in the works that are coming out. A new movie series will debut in July. That is part of something that's already, one episode's already came out of it, and it will be part of a trilogy. So if you know what I'm talking about, that'll make sense later on. But that is it. Oh, if you want to join the conversation, anytime you listen to Tomorrow Comes Movies, no matter what episode, join the conversation by doing one or two ways. One, hashtagging TOC Movies wherever you're at on social media. And two, hashtag TOC Movies. Also add us at TOC Movies. That's our handle across every platform on social media. And let us know what you think of the episode, that you're tuning in. We really appreciate it. So this episode features a returning guest co-host. It's been a while, right? It's been a while. We usually hear this particular episode, it's a first-time guest co-host, but it's nice to have people come back. And this is somebody who I was on their podcast originally. They're the real reason why I sparked my interest in returning to podcasting, was them asking me to be a guest on theirs. And despite what they're going to say to you in a little bit here, they are a podcast superstar. So please welcome, not only is my awesome Twitter mutual, also my friend, fellow podcaster, Drake, who hosts the First Watch podcast. How you doing, Drake?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing good. It's so funny that
Not
him
too
and I
bad.
were just talking we were just talking for 45 minutes, and then I'm just like, how are you? And it's like, he just heard me crashing out. But it's good to have you back on, man. How have you been? What's new?
Nothing much. Just busy. Just working on my own podcast mostly. Just we were talking about how many episodes we've each both got in the can. So you and I both know how it is, like having to do a bunch to have kind of planned out. You know, like having to shoot a bunch of these podcasts back to back to back to back. This is in 48 hours I'll end up having 3 done, including this one. So yeah, and plus like all the others that I did in the past like 2 weeks. I think I've done maybe 10 or 11 in the past 2 weeks, and then I need to do a couple more before I end up going on vacation to Kansas, just so I have a few in the bank. But yeah, it's mostly just doing this stuff, man. Just connecting with people and talking about movies.
Does it ever get like, just pull back the curtain a little bit? We do podcasts. Both of us have the similar podcast where we have a different guest co-host every time. Do you ever get exhausted doing like reviewing movies? Does it ever get like you love to do it obviously, but you're like, sometimes you're just like, it's not just watching a movie for 2 hours. You're sitting there thinking about what you're gonna say, right, during the episode. You're
Yeah,
like,
it's funny because I'll think about what I'm gonna say like while I'm watching a movie, and then I end up having a completely different conversation whenever it actually happens, because it just kind of depends on whatever the conversation is like naturally. Um, and yeah, so I'll start to do that. I'll start to think about the movie while I'm watching it, but it usually just doesn't end up being what I initially want it to be, and it ends up being something else because it's more natural just by talking about it, talking it out between the two of us, whoever's on the pod. Um, it does get kind of exhausting, but like in a good way because I'm kind of like mentally stimulated, and I'm just like hell yeah, like this is good. It's just like since I'm doing a lot of them, I'm like exhausted. And the editing portion is what really gets me. But
yes, yeah, that's what we were talking about off the mic. Is some of us love editing and some of us don't, and
yeah,
that's just the way it is. But yeah, I want to take a break, and it's funny. I just went on break, and I just decided while on break, I decided I'm going to launch 3 different movie series on top of the action series
yeah.
that I have, and I got to be honest. Yeah, it's a lot, but you know what? I think you said it. It's like it's a good exhaustion because it could be worse. You and I could be struggling to get people to come onto this show. Like that would like for our shows, like because we have to rely on getting somebody each episode. Like, could you imagine if we went like 3 weeks with like nobody being like, I don't want to come on, and that would be truly a nightmare, right?
No, yeah, that's where it gets a little dicey and your anxiety really starts to spike, and then you have to be like, okay, wait, which ones can I know that I can rely on to come on? So like you, Marley, Vakash, and Holly are like the 4 that I keep in the back pocket where I'm like, okay, if I need to hit an episode, I know I can hit those guys and they're willing to do it and I don't have to worry about it. But usually, you want to try to get new people on, just to get newer voices and kind of get new perspectives and cultivate new relationships. But sometimes it doesn't work out that way. So you gotta fall back on the old faithfuls and see what happens.
Yeah, and I love how it's funny. I know what he meant when he said back pocket, but he knows me so well. And I'm about to say this. I know why I'm in the back pocket. I'm not a front. I'm not a starting lineup guy. I'm just kidding. I'm just
No,
kidding.
no, 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 no. Like
I
back
get what you
pocket is
mean.
in like yeah, like you're safe if you hit one of these guys up. You have them in the back pocket just so if you need to get a crunch time in, you can rely on them to be like, yeah, I'll watch the movie tonight and we'll shoot tomorrow. Like those are the type of people that you want in your back pocket because you don't have to worry about those guys because you're good to go. Like you always want a core 3 or 4 that you bring on regularly that you can kind of gauge that it's gonna not only be a good conversation, but you don't have to worry about the setup and the craziness. You can just be like, hell yeah, I know I can text you or message you and you're ready to go in like 24 hours, 36 hours at least. So having someone like that in the back pocket is like a good thing to have. That's what you want because it'll make your life a whole lot easier.
Yes, I know what you meant. I just had to say that joke about because that's how I feel
Yeah.
always when it comes to because like now when I'm hitting people up now after I've done it with Seth and of the movie friends and you, I can now say like in my messages like, would you like to come on my podcast? I've had podcast superstars like Seth of Movie Friends and Drake of the First Watch podcast, and then if they don't,
I wouldn't
as
classify
Seth,
myself as a superstar. Let's not go that far.
well, listen, and then this is where this is the best part. And then Seth said in this episode I did with him on Commando, he says, "Well, if they're not interested in me, then you can say at the bottom." So after Seth, Drake, I also had Citizen Kane's biggest fan, Ray Ray, on the podcast. So you can come on. So you guys are my 3 go-to. So if nobody wants to come on, then I'm like, ah. But it is good to have you back on. And I know people are like, this is a movie podcast. It seems like you guys are just talking about podcasting, not like nothing about your movies. But for those who may have not tuned into our Drugstore Cowboy episode, what is the First Watch podcast? Like, remind our listeners here, some of them who may not be familiar or for some reason forgot. I'm not sure why they would have forgot.
Yeah, so the First Watch podcast, it's a fairly straightforward title. for a reason. You know, I talk to people who haven't seen a movie that they've been putting off for a long time, and I finally get them to tick it off their watch list, and we talk through the movie and talk through like the themes of the movie, what happens in the movie, stuff like that. Um, the biggest inspiration for that was like watching Letterboxd always ask the question of like what were your favorite first watches of any given month, you know, at the end of each month, and then having people just constantly talk about um, all their favorite first watches of a month and how passionate they got. So I was like, you know what? Why not make a podcast a lot like that formula where people will come on and talk about movies that they have seen for the first time? Um, Usually because it comes with the best kind of conversation because they're starting to, um, you know, they watch movies and they make connections to other movies they've seen or things that are going on in the world, and it just makes for a good time.
You might be a podcast superstar because you answered that question exactly the way I wanted you to to answer it. Because like you could have just said, "This is my podcast," but you actually broke down what your podcast is, why you started this podcast, and in my opinion, it is one of the best podcasts because I've been on it twice. I did Bong Joon Ho's mother, and I did. I hope I say her name right, Agnes Varda. I'm just gonna say Agnes Varda.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
probably got it
No,
wrong.
you're
Les
right.
Bonheur, and those are two movies that I would not have seen anytime soon if it wasn't for your podcast, which I will link. You should check them
Oh,
out,
same.
not because of me, because of Drake. Drake is really good at podcasting. So actually, you know what? You are a podcast superstar. I'm gonna
No,
have
I'm
to write
not.
that now.
Stop. No, I'm not. Stop it.
But yeah,
I'm nowhere near
it's
that.
good to. Oh no, you have a lot. I'm telling you, you're really good at this. But it is good to have you back on. You know, you're one of the people I always hope I can get back on because
Yeah, of course.
you know me pretty well now. I mean, on and off the mic, so you know, kind of how I am. But I do have a couple warm up questions. This is get us started here, and you know, this one do the best you can because like you know sometimes I'll ask somebody a question. This is actually true. I ask somebody a question and they're like I don't know, and I'm just like I gave you the questions in advance. You know, I'm just like, you know, I did give it to
Yeah.
you. Okay.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
you could recommend a few films that aren't as well known or as popular to others who are into movies, but they don't know about them, like what would be the choices?
So, Catherine Hahn plays um a woman who at that time she was kind of in her late 30s, early 40s, I think. Um and she's in a relationship and they decide to go to a strip club just for like a night out, you know, with her and some friends, I believe, if I remember correctly. It's been about a year since I've seen it, but they decide to go out to a strip club, and she meets a stripper played by uh, Juno Temple, um, and she gets a lap dance, and she kind of realizes that she really enjoyed it, and she kind of keeps that secret to herself, but she seeks out Juno at the club by herself one day because she kind of wanted that again, and then noticed that Juno was having some issues. So she decided to bring her into her house. And it was just kind of like that dynamic of not only kind of finding out something about yourself later on in life, but also having to deal with that in an already established relationship and keeping that to yourself and like trying to juggle all these different things um, while also, you know, living your life in the best way that you can. It's a very interesting movie that I don't think a lot of people have seen. That I think people should give a shot for sure.
Yeah. Actually, by the way, like nobody will know this except Drake and I, but that's a deep cut. When I had brought up that Catherine Hahn movie, that's a deep cut in our
It's a little
podcasting
bit of a
lore.
deep cut, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that's one I wanted. I was wondering if you were going to highlight. That's why I was like, let me bring it up because I had not remembered the title, but I remember you telling me about this, and I'm like, I love Catherine. Now, this question, this is going to be interesting here. In naming your opinion, 5 definitive films from Martin Scorsese.
5 definitive. Okay, so Mean Streets, obviously. Um, Honestly, I would say, um, Killer of the Flower Moon. I would say Taxi Driver. And then, 5 is like crazy because he's done so fucking many. This is the thing about him. He's done so many. The Irishman is very interesting to me. In that it is like a long movie, but it still holds up in the way that it should. And then Wolf of Wall Street.
I like all the movies you chose. Like, and you could ask 10 different people this, and they're gonna have 10 different lists and there'll be some that you'll recognize, but everyone's gonna be different. Like, I guess if I love the one you picked, by the way, Mean Streets. 100% agree. That's a definitive. Martin Scorsese, Casino, Goodfellas, Taxi Driver, and then The Departed for me, which is funny. That basically tells you what kind of movies
Oh
I'm into with
yeah,
Martin Scorsese. I
I
love
totally
those
forgot
mob
about Departed.
movies. But yeah, but you
Yeah,
pulled
I
out
love The
Killers of the
Departed.
Flower Moon. That's a deep one to me.
Yeah,
It's
because like
recent, but
I yeah, and I think the only reason that I necessarily pulled that one out is because of the fact that he is older, but it goes to show that even as an older filmmaker, he still fucking got it. And there's not very many people that you can point to at this stage in their life, in their late 70s, early 80s, they can go, oh yeah, this motherfucker still got it. And he's got 72 director credits under his name, whether it be commercials, whether it be movies, whether it be, anything. He's been doing this for a very long time. And you can look at Killers of the Flower Moon that was done a couple years ago and still like, yeah, this guy still got it. Like he hasn't missed a step at all.
yeah, I agree. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a Martin Scorsese movie in theaters, if we go by that kind of way, that I've yet to walk out and be like, oh, like every time he does it, I'm just amazed that I'm convinced he could take any script. He probably could have taken, I'm not even lying, he probably could have taken Scary Movie 6 and that would have been an Oscar nominated movie. I'm not even kidding. I don't know. He would have done something with that. I didn't see it, but yeah, I'm
Do
convinced
something
that he
better than what
just,
they did, probably.
that's what I've heard. But yeah, that basically wraps up the warm up questions. But you said something very interesting because the movie we're going to review is part of this movie series called
Tomorrow Comes Movies presents Hidden Gems of Cinema.
Gems, a cinema. It's a movie series. It's a treasure trove of films that are considered unknown, underappreciated, underrated, or once popular and have fallen into obscurity. And you chose Martin Scorsese's Mean Streets, which is an interesting movie because you said in your list Mean Streets is a definitive film of his, and his last film, Killers of the Flower Moon, is a definitive list. And we'll talk about a interesting dynamic from 73 to what Killers of the Flower Moon came out 2024, right? I think so,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
2023,
And so
2024. Yeah.
yeah, one of those, those years. But before we get into Mean Streets, I'm gonna give these movie facts here, and this is incredible when you think about this. Is Mean Streets was
Mhm.
released on October 14th, 1973. That's a long time ago now, and he's still making films, right? He not only did he direct this, he had a hand in the screenplay with Mardic Martin, so they kind of did it together. And listen to this cast. Okay, the first two names here should let you know how legendary this movie is and should be talked about more often. Harvey Keitel, Robert De Niro, two tie-ins, right? And then you have David Porval, you have Amy Robinson, and Richard Romanus. And the synopsis of Mean Streets is set in Little Italy, New York. A religious young mobster juggles the everyday life and desires for power, while also dealing with his relationships with his girlfriend and his troublemaking friend. Now, if you haven't seen Mean Streets, I would highly recommend you should probably check this out because if you love Martin Scorsese, movies, this is really one that you should definitely check out. If not, we're just gonna spoil it, and it doesn't matter. You're ready, Drake?
Yes, sir.
Let's
Let's do this.
talk. Let's talk movies. So, why did you choose Mean Streets?
In all honesty, it was because it was one of the only Criterion movies that I haven't popped into my 4K player yet. And I was like, hey, an excuse. And yeah, I have a ton of 4K Criterion movies that I have not watched. I've seen it before. I've seen Mean Streets before, but I haven't had the chance to, or necessarily the reason to pop in the 4K. So I was like, you know what, this is a perfect opportunity.
It is, and by the way, like it's. I was gonna ask, cause like I'm pretty sure you had seen it. Yeah, you know, the first time I saw it was I used to go to Big Lots to buy movies. There was a time where they were there, right? And I saw this, and I go, "What is Mean Streets?" And I knew Martin Scorsese because of his mob movies, and I read it, and I go, "This has got to be. I'll check this out," you know. And I'm like, it came a few years after, a few years before Taxi Driver. What a movie! Like I was like, how is this not talked about more often?
Yeah.
So, and I thought this was the perfect movie. When you chose it, I was actually really excited because this really does work in the hidden gems of cinema. And so, first question here. Okay, so and it's kind of like I'm starting to do. It's kind of like a two-parter, and try your best. I know this is difficult because I've done it too. Is if you can try to remember the first time you saw Mean Streets up until and at the same time when you just rewatched it, what were some of your first impressions of Mean Streets? I know that it's funny because you're like, I have to go back in time and think about when I saw this movie.
Yeah. No, yeah. It was definitely in high school because that's when I started to watch other things that I wasn't watching before. So yeah, I probably watched it in high school with some friends at a friend's house. Um, there's not much that I remember about that time in general, but I do remember being kind of fascinated with like the amount of red in this movie as far as lighting goes, and then just how like I didn't feel like this movie was an old movie to me. I was like, okay, this feels like a, a regular contemporary movie to me. Um, but yeah, I think that was the first time I saw it was in high school. And then this time I obviously have a different feeling about it now that I've seen more films, but
I saw this in January and they brought it back.
really
Did you see it? Yeah, did you see it or no?
in theaters?
Yeah.
No, I didn't see it. I didn't see the January release in theaters. Um, no, I don't even think I went to the movies at all in January. Yeah.
Wow.
I don't think I did.
I love those movie series, but I felt like I had to come out because I'm like, when will Mean Streets ever come back to theaters? Because it's not very well known, considering it is Martin Scorsese. It's an independent. It's like considered like one of the best independent films of all time. Like, I guess my assessment, my first impression of this movie was this might be the best Martin Scorsese film you've never heard of, which is strange
weird.
to me.
Yeah, which is because that's like that is the blueprint for mob movies. Is Mean Streets.
Drake is like in my mind. That is exactly what I was gonna say. It is a prelude to if you're a fan of the Martin Scorsese films like Goodfellas or Casino, you can even Irishman, Departed. This is kind of like the prelude. It'll give you everything you kind of want that he's going to kind of go into further later on with some of the exploration of friendships and trials and tribulations, and then the mob aspect. Yeah, it is a weird thing because I don't understand why this film is not put in the same conversation as some of his more iconic films. Because I mean, for an independent film, I think you would agree that it looks pretty good. I got to be honest, it looks pretty well done for an independent film. Like if I did not know that aspect, I would not have really thought it, to be honest.
I think he got some like heads up from Francis Ford Coppola. Like he ended up getting some like mentorship. I know he got the money from Francis to be able to do the movie. And Francis apparently was not necessarily worried about getting the money back until after they sold it. He was like, no, just go make the film. Like this is what you want to do. Like just go make it. And so I think him having that, I guess, backbone, or even just the not even necessarily backbone, but like that belief in him that he could do something like this, I think that's necessarily what fueled it to be so good. But he also had the mentorship of someone like Francis Ford Coppola, who was doing movies like this at that time, which probably helped a lot.
Yeah, I mean, interesting that the way you said that because I'm wondering if Francis Ford Coppola hit up Martin Scorsese when he's like, "Hey, I want to make this movie called Megalopolis. Remember when I helped you out with Mean Streets? You think you can, you can help me out here?" That's so funny because that's the first thing that came to
Marty was
mind.
probably
He's
like,
like,
"I'm good,
Martin Scorsese,
brother."
he's like, "Go back to the club." If you saw that movie, right? I don't know if you saw that line always made me
I saw
laugh
it
with
in
Adam
theaters.
Driver.
Yeah, no, I saw it in theaters, and it was a shit show.
Strange. It's funny, I don't know if I hated it. It was an experience. The way I look at it is like I saw a Francis Ford Coppola new movie in theaters, and I go, I mean, I don't know, whatever. But yeah, I mean, I didn't know that whole thing of it. So thank you for sharing that about Francis Ford Coppola with Martin Scorsese. Because yeah, I think that was really cool to see him do that because Martin Scorsese, even in his early career, had the sauce, right? Like Mean Streets is a unique thing, and I think when he tells stories that are a little bit personal, um, it's always with the with movies that are kind of with Italians, he always seems to really do his best work, and I think it's because there's a personal factor with it. Now with Mean Streets, what are some of the highlights for you with this film?
Mostly the way it looks. I think the way that it's shot is really well done. Um, you don't feel like you're missing a lot, but you also don't feel like you're overwhelmed either. It feels like it's perfectly done to where everything is spaced out and everything properly. Um, and then like the music is really good. They're fantastic music choices. So much so that like the song that the movie opens up on has been stuck in my head since I watched it yesterday. And I'm really upset about that because I can't get it out of my damn head. But like, yeah, he made some great choices as far as music, and I think that's without having music that complements a movie, it could be pretty disastrous. But he did a very good job in choosing what he chose for the music, and then obviously the acting is
Actually, yeah,
fantastic because duh.
yeah, you did. It's funny, the music. I'm convinced that he's used that in Goodfellas. I think he used that song in Goodfellas. I might be confused. Maybe it could be another one, but I swear I've
He
heard
might
him
have.
use that. Yeah, and I gotta be honest, it does stick in your head. Yeah, Mean Streets is kind of like a time capsule because like it's something that you and I will never ever experience. Is New York in the 70s? What a vibe! I mean, that city is truly lively. Like it's moving, it's shaking. I love the way it opens up. It kind of feels that aesthetic, that old school aesthetic with the way it's filmed in the beginning, and then yeah, you were talking about the color red. I love the color red used in this because when they're at Tony's bar, it looks really cool. But like, there's this Harvey Keitel, these kind of scenes that Harvey Keitel does where he's dancing and you're behind him, and he not only he's a really good dancer by the way
Yeah.
too, but that was a really cool shot. And then like anytime there's a lot of different shots that Martin Scorsese uses in this. So the visually, the cinematography is excellent. The music, you're right, is excellent. The acting, I mean, a young Harvey Keitel, Robert De Niro. They're not even superstars at this point. They're not well recognizable names.
No.
Talk about a trifecta of three guys who are going to end up becoming superstars. Two, maybe more so, but these three, their careers were never the same after this, and it's really a great story. To me, in some aspects, it's kind of like a coming of age with our main character Charlie,
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
because yeah, like even in the 70s, we can't relate to some of the things that are happening in the 70s, but there's still the aspect of like your friendships with people who are good influences and bad influences. There's
Mm-hmm.
dealing with a girl when you're relationships, and then like the only there's some stigmatism with certain things like with mental health, and then also like with other things like health factors that is really strange to me in 2026, but I have to understand that in the 70s it was a different thing. But I really love the story, and I really love Charlie. That was actually the thing about Harvey Keitel's Charlie, is a really good character. So those are my highlights, and also because also Robert De Niro is a highlight. He is unbelievable how he is in this movie as Johnny Boy.
Yeah.
Now on the flip side of it, right? Like on Mean Streets, is there anything about it you don't like?
There's not much that I don't like about this movie. It's a very good movie for a reason. It's considered a fantastic movie for a reason. It is the blueprint for mobster movies for a reason. Like, because everybody goes back to it when they want to watch a great mobster movie.
Yeah.
It's not flawless, but it's fantastic.
Yeah. I don't really have any. There's nothing about it I don't like. I mean, there's things in the movie, like with the story or how things are handled, I don't like.
The other thing was maybe like some of the acting was a little flat in some of the people, but then again, very young, like cast, very independent film, so you're gonna get that. Like the manager of the pool hall or whatever, or I think it was the pool hall, right? Like he was kind of flat, but like it wasn't so bad that it was like, oh yeah, I can't watch this. It was just kind of one of those things that was just like, all right, that kind of stuck out.
Funny that you bring up the pool hall scene. You know, because we're gonna bounce around here. Let's talk about that pool hall scene. That was an interesting thing to see in a time capsule of this movie. You're not gonna see this anymore. Is going to collect money from a pool hall, and you're just here to collect money, and yet something, I learned I had to look up the word mook because that was used, and I was just like, what does that
Yeah.
mean? And then you find out it's like somebody who's incompetent, and it was like the whole pool hall scene is one of the craziest parts of this movie because so basically Charlie and Johnny Boy, Harvey Keitel and Robert De Niro and their gang go down there. They go collect this money from this pool hall guy it's funny that you bring it up. And he is a little bit of a character though. And he's going to pay, like, first he doesn't want to pay them and then he's going to pay them. But then Robert De Niro's Johnny Boy is one of the most frustrating characters I've ever seen. He is, he messes up everything. He cannot be allowed to open his mouth, and it turns into this gigantic. One of the craziest parts of the movie is this pool hall fight, and Martin Scorsese. It's hilarious because I know it's 73, but it made me laugh. Was their fighting is just them pushing a guy, and Martin Scorsese follows with the camera throughout the whole, and like they get a few punches in, but they're basically just walking this guy backwards. And what did you think of that whole pool hall fight? Because that made, I was dying laughing throughout that.
It's funny because like we get to that scene and the first thing I thought of was like, oh, I think this is the same pool hall that they used in Deep Cover. I don't think that's true, but it looks exactly like the pool hall that was in Deep Cover. But I could understand why they only did like a pushing and shoving kind of fight in this film, since it was a very independent movie and they didn't really have all the same kind of like insurances and protections that they needed for like a large budget movie. So I kind of understand that. It was kind of a little hokey considering what they were looking to do to be able to rough them up and get their money that they were quote unquote owed. But considering, the restrictions that they had for an independent film, it kind of makes sense. And it serves the story well enough to where it doesn't like take you out of it. It keep you're still in it. But it was very interesting to see it kind of, have all this escalation with words and arguments, only for it to be like, no, you, no, you, no, you, like that kind of thing. Where I was like, all right.
Yeah. And yeah, it is an independent film, so I know they can't break everything. But honestly, it was kind of cool because visually it looks cool, and also if you really want to know what the entire pool hall looks like, Martin Scorsese makes sure that you see it through this whole thing.
Yeah.
And the thing about it I want to ask you is you and I have to be in that scene for some odd reason. We're with Charlie and Johnny Boy, so we're the other two guys. We're not Tony and the other guy, and we have to get in this fight. How confident are we that we're going to be able to throw down?
I'm out the door, brother. I'm out the door. You're not seeing me. I'm like, bye. In my current state, in my body, fuck that. I'm out of there. That or I'm grabbing a pool cue and I'm just hoping for the best. I'm whacking it over someone's head. I'm taking the large end and just hitting them in the jaw if I can.
I just picture you being basically they're walking you backwards and you're like, all right, make sure you guys go toward the exit because I'm just gonna go out that way. The fighting's over, like they just walk you. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just gonna start to kind of contort my body to make myself kind of go in that direction and hope they just continually bring me back to the exit. I'm like, bye guys. See ya.
Yeah. I'm over here like as soon as I see you get out of the pool, I'm like, am I going next? They're like, no, only one of you can leave. And they're just taking me around the whole pool hall. But this is something that is different that made me think about how, as we're guys, how different men were in that time versus today, where they get into this fight and then the police have to get involved. And the reason why, by the way, this fight began is because Robert De Niro's Johnny Boy, like I said, he cannot behave. He says, and if I remember correctly, this is what he said. There's these girls by the jukebox, and he's calling them skanks. And the guy's like, well, the girls like the music. Like, there's nothing wrong with what's going on here. And he goes, those aren't girls, those are skanks. I wouldn't even use your prick to bang them. And I don't blame the pool hall guy being like, yo, what the fuck is up with this dude? Like, why is he saying that?
What's wrong with you? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, us being in that situation, and that's our friend, what is the first thing that's coming out of your mouth when he says that? Like, are you like, shut up, no more talking?
First, I'd be shocked at first, and I'd be like, what the fuck is your problem? Like, what are you talking about? Like, they're hanging out here. Do you not want that? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It was weird.
I just was like, I probably would, just avoid not getting beat up. I'm just like, because I know you're going to get through to the door. I'm just like, Johnny, Charlie, I'm going to the car.
Yeah.
I don't want to deal with this. I already know where this is going. But yeah, like, they get into this gigantic fight over his, Johnny Boy's smart mouth gets him in trouble. And then when the police come, the police guy kind of frisks Charlie, and he finds a knife that apparently has a toothpick thing, whatever. We know that's not true. And then the pool hall guy has to bribe him, basically, to not so they don't get arrested. And then they claim that they're cousins, and like, it's all good, we're all friends. And what a different time, because that would not happen in 2026. You would not be gentlemen about it. You'd be like, nah, he can go to jail, I don't give a damn about him. And they paid the cop off, and then they all decide to have drinks, right? Like, they all have these drinks, and then Johnny Boy doesn't want to let it go. But like, isn't that strange? Like, we're not like that anymore, guys. We would film it. It probably would be tragic. I can't imagine that somebody's not dying in that situation, for sure. But like, what a time, right? Like, do you think we need to go back to that kind of gentleman world?
Yeah, probably. We've kind of conditioned ourselves now to where we want the notoriety of the clicks and the attention that we get from the confrontation by filming it and putting it out there in the world. We either want to look like badasses by, yelling at someone on a camera and making it look like we're the good guys and having a moral high ground. We're more inclined to want a moral high ground than to work things out at this point in society, which is like really strange. But it is what it is. Like, we're trying to, I don't know why we've gone this way, other than, the introduction of social media kind of forcing us to be this way, because people make money off of acting like a moron. But yeah.
Yeah, I see streamers getting knocked down. I go, they wouldn't last a day in mean streets. They would not last a day. Yeah. It's not something to brag about. But yeah, I thought that was interesting watching this, because they're immature, though, for what happened, that whole pool scene. Like, that could have easily been resolved. There's some things that still today, similar immaturity, guys, with pride. But that level of being at the end, where like, I don't want anybody to get in trouble. We're all good. Let's all just get over. And then, of course, Johnny Boy says something, and then they all end up having that. They end up like, basically, that pool hall guy gets mad again, and then he does that classic like this or whatever. And I'm just like, what a time that it will never be like again. But there's a gentleman level to it. But speaking of Mean Street, let's talk about some of the characters. What are some of your favorite characters, and which ones do you hate and frustrate you the most?
I mean, Johnny Boy is frustrating, right? But I still kind of love him for what he brings to the movie, right? And then obviously Charlie is really great. I think he was the one that was with Teresa, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, so their relationship was very interesting. And to see it kind of play out in front of us was interesting. And I like Teresa a little bit too. Just because she was that like opposing force to Charlie, and to see their relationship be somewhat contentious was an interesting part in the film that I kind of enjoyed.
Yeah, it is funny the way you talked about Johnny Boy, because I mean, he does make the movie interesting, but my God, is he frustrating. Like, because he's the guy
Oh, he's
you'll have a good
frustrating as
time with him.
hell.
Yeah, like you know that if you hang out with him and it has nothing to do with his personal problems, like owing people money, he's fun. He's fun to hang out with. He's unpredictable. You know you're gonna have a good time with. Yeah, with Johnny Boy, like if I remember correctly, our introduction to this guy is him putting a firecracker into a mailbox and it explodes. And you already know right then and there who this guy is. Like you're like, this is that we all have that one friend that does strange things. And if I'm correct, that's a federal crime, right? There's no way that he could do that now.
Yes, it is. It's a federal crime. Yeah. He's one of those. Johnny Boy is one of those that you want to watch from afar and not necessarily be close to, but you're kind of like looking at him like a zoo animal, and you're like, let's see what he does. Let's just like poke the bear a little bit and see what happens. He's kind of one of those guys that you're just like, this could be very good or very bad, and I don't know which way it's gonna go.
If Johnny Boy's like, hey, like let's hang out, like would you do that? If he's like, hey, let's throw firecrackers in the mailbox in the 70s, New York.
I mean, it depends on where I was in my life at that time. Like if I'm still like the drinking portion of my life, I'd probably be all over that. But this version of my life, nah, fuck that. You kids go have fun. I'm gonna I'm gonna stay over here and not be in trouble. I'm good.
Yeah, there's no way. There's no way that maybe as a kid, I don't know, even as a kid, because like federal crimes are not. Let me tell you, I don't want to deal with anything with that.
Yeah.
It's a federal crime. But like, yeah, we get to know Johnny, and then we meet Charlie, who is his like best friend, right? Like he's a good Catholic boy who is a mobster, but he's also like kind of juggling this life of him wanting to be, you know, a young guy in New York City and also like wanting to move up in his uncle's organization. And then we meet the other two guys really in the group but it's funny, one of them is really not in the group, but they make it seem like in the beginning. But Tony, who runs the bar, and then you have Michael, who's a friend of them, but who Johnny Boy owes a lot of money with.
This man.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. I don't know how he got to even borrow as much money as he did, but he borrowed so much money that it was freaking ridiculous.
Yeah, and this story, basically, this is a big part of the story, is Charlie has his shit together. I mean, he's not perfect, but he's a lot more structured compared to his friend Johnny Boy, but he constantly has to take care of Johnny Boy because, you know, I mean, you grew up together, that's your brother, and Johnny Boy owes money to everybody. Apparently, he's borrowing money from the whole fucking neighborhood, and he borrows from his friend Michael, who he's not paying back, and this is kind of a big part of the story. Let me ask you, what did you think about this with Johnny Boy not borrowing all this money? Like, at what point do you think in the neighborhood you're there, are you giving him money?
No. If I heard that he wasn't paying anybody else back, I would make up some sort of excuse to be like, yeah, man, I ain't got the money, or like I've got, you know, this, that, or the third coming up that I have to pay for. So I would not entertain that in any way if I had known that he was borrowing money left, right, and center and just not paying it. I would come up with any excuse I could to not give it to him.
What do you think about Michael's role in this? They are friends, but he's not entirely happy, but he seemingly behaves because of his respect for his other friend Charlie, who's trying to be this mediator. Like, what do you think of Michael's, like, do you agree with how Michael handled majority of this owed debt by Johnny Boy?
Kind of. I mean, I feel like he's just in the middle of it a little bit. So I don't necessarily know how I would have handled that if I was in his situation. Because everyone's going to handle it very differently. Once they're actually in that situation. But I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that other than like he did what he could and that was about it.
Yeah. Do you think Charlie was too lenient on Johnny Boy?
Probably. Yeah. I mean, Johnny Boy was essentially a pressure cooker just waiting to fucking pop. And there was only like one way it would go. And it's, you know, it goes the way it goes. But, you know, it's to be expected with somebody like Johnny Boy, you know?
Yeah. It made me laugh that you said pressure cooker because I'm pretty sure he stole that from his aunt's house.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who?
Oh, the
And
irony.
yeah, and so and speaking of Johnny Boy, like we'll come back to these other characters, but performance wise, Robert De Niro steals the show as Johnny Boy. It's hard because Harvey Keitel is kind of the main character, but it's hard to beat Robert De Niro, a young emerging Robert De Niro who plays this character that you just want to put your hands around his throat because you're just like enough. Like I'm pretty sure he might be the father of Howard Ratner from Uncut Gems.
Yeah.
There's a possibility. What did you think of Robert De Niro's performance? Because to me, this is a breakout performance that would
Oh yeah. I loved him. I mean, there's a reason, we get to see Robert De Niro as like that like titular mob guy, and it's because of this movie and what he was able to do with this movie. He does a fantastic job for someone that was so young, so inexperienced at that time, because he wasn't all that experienced at that time. It is very interesting to be able to see his kind of beginnings in one of the best films, and to be able to work with one of the best directors where they're both kind of coming up at the exact same time together, is very interesting thing to see.
Yeah, and it's funny. It was he's not really well known, and this is kind of his big break. And you can see the trademarks that will come later on in his career. Some of the like he has. I gotta be honest, Robert De Niro. I never noticed this until Mean Streets, but he does have this he does have an iconic smile. Like that, you kind of just yeah. And you said something about Johnny Boy where you're like he is frustrating, but he's charming. Yeah, Robert De Niro plays him charming because there's times where you're just like he's a kind of a cool guy, like because he doesn't play by the rules. He does whatever he wants, but then like he has his moments where he's just like he's a guy you could definitely have fun with, but you're just wondering if you're gonna get beat up or you're gonna get arrested. You know what I mean? By the end of the night. But yeah, he plays that character well. But the other two characters that are kind of Tony at the bar. By the way, another thing that Johnny Boy's crazy. Why are you running up two different tabs? There's a small tab and there's a big tab on one of your really good friends. It's crazy. And like, but what did you think of Tony as a character?
Tony was interesting. Like, he was kind of one of those, like, he let Johnny Boy kind of run all over him to an extent, but, I think Johnny Boy also kind of took advantage of Tony being nice, because Tony was a nice guy. And yeah, just like to see Tony kind of get walked all over was kind of sad, but it just, people like Johnny Boy will take advantage of that. And because they see it and they're like, oh, I can manipulate this guy, and like, because I'm a quote unquote likable guy, or like, I'm fun to be around, so I can use this to my advantage to get what I want. And that's kind of what he did.
Yeah. Tony's a really nice guy. Until apparently he has like a kind of like he's kind of in a rut, or he's kind of like unhappy at one point in the movie where he doesn't want to play cards. I don't know if you noticed that. Like he's in a bad mood. The only time in the movie he's ever in a bad mood, he's like, I don't want to play cards, and him and Johnny Boy get into it. Like I said, Johnny Boy loves to instigate with everybody. Like I knew a guy who was like this, and I'd like to know if he's still like that because he drove me nuts in high school. I'm just like, dude, relax, like stop, like it was fun for a little bit, but after a while you're like, enough.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about some of the insane scenarios. Usually I say like, what is the most insane scenario? But there's a lot in this movie. We talked about the pool hall scene. Let's talk about this is crazy. Is there's a drunk who's at Tony's bar. He goes to use the restroom, and this guy with like a ponytail comes in, and because we've seen the mob movies of Martin Scorsese's career later on, we know that something's not right when that guy comes in, the way he's looking at this drunk who's played by, I believe it's Robert Carradine, part of the Carradine family. Yeah. And he goes into the bathroom, and then this guy goes into the bathroom, the ponytail guy, who, by the way, takes out his ponytail. I'm not sure why he needed to do that, but okay. And then he shoots the drunk, who then turns around after, I think it was 3 shots, and then proceeds to charge at the guy. And they do that same thing like in the pool hall scene. We get the run around to the front of the bar, and then they go outside eventually. Well, actually, I think they go to the bar, and then they have a little scuffle again, and then they get pushed out. I don't know, the drunk somehow is able to do this. It's crazy. Pushes out the ponytail guy into the point where the ponytail guy breaks free and he runs into a car across the street and then collapses.
Yeah.
And then everybody in the bar is kind of freaking out. Like, you tell me, what did you think of that? That was wild to me.
Yeah. If I heard the commentary correctly, that was actually like a story that that Scorsese heard growing up, or like something that he heard about, I think from his father or something like that. There was just something that he had known, so he put it in the movie. I can't remember if he like saw it himself or heard it as a story or what, but yeah, he gets shot multiple times, and you kind of know this of like people who are on drugs who get shot. Like, this is a very common thing for people who are drugged out of their mind. Whenever they get shot, they have like not only this boost of adrenaline, but they also have the drugs that are in their system that allows them to not feel the fucking pain that they're in. And they just like usually charge. So it is not surprising to me that, you know, he was able to charge and stuff like that, because it does happen sometimes. It doesn't happen very often, but it can. And I thought it was a very interesting thing to put. I don't necessarily see why it was in the movie, because I don't feel like it serves like anything for the rest of the story, other than for Scorsese to put it in the movie to kind of like showcase a little bit more of his life and what he dealt with as a younger guy before he got into the filmmaking world. Because a lot of the things that you see in Mean Streets is the very thing that he was kind of getting himself into prior to becoming one of the best filmmakers of all time. So I think that was ultimately the only reason why he put it in the movie, but it was very interesting to see it kind of against everything else that was in there. It just added one more thing that was like crazy for, you know, for crazy's sake.
Yeah, I you know what, the way I looked at it was, that's an interesting point actually, the way you brought, yeah, because it only serves like a small point where it's brought up one more time and then it's done in a conversation later on that really doesn't pertain to anything, except it just shows you how crazy, I guess, how people can perceive disrespect and think that they can do this hitman execution to hopefully move up, but it backfires. But like, it's wild to me because, you know, like, I don't know if you see this. Sometimes I'll see on the timeline, and because you were talking about people wanting engagement and they want to get money from it, people always say like, you know, like, without cell phones, like, what did people do back in the day? Mean Streets shows you how on any given day in New York in the 70s that there's shit going on where you don't need a phone. Like, that was wild. Okay, like that, something like that happening, or the pool hall scene. Like, you just happen to be there, and something like that would happen. So it always makes me laugh when young people are like, "What would you do without your cell phone?" It's like, well, we would be living life. It's not, our life's not on a reel for 30 seconds. Like, there's a lot going on here, and I think that's the one thing I always loved about Mean Streets was how alive things are and how, like, we need to get back out there in the world. Now, maybe not doing what they're doing in the movie, but like just living. But yeah, the scene with the execution, I thought that was wild because I couldn't. My heart would drop if I had seen that and I'm in that bar. I'm immediately not even waiting. I'm just booking it. I'm immediately booking it to the entrance or some back door. Let me ask you though, you're that guy with the ponytail. Do you need to take out your ponytail to do the kill, or do you think
no? It was kind of funny, but it was kind of one of those things that like, oh yeah, we're gonna show that he's a bad guy by making him take out the ponytail. It was just so funny to see that. I didn't think it was necessary. I kind of chuckled a little bit, and I was like, all right, whatever. But yeah, it was just so weird that they did that.
That's what you get on Tomorrow. That's what you get on Tomorrow Comes Movies, is being like, "What'd you think of this scene?" And then be like, "Well, would you, you know, let's go back to the ponytail real quick." Yeah, I don't think I would take out my ponytail. I don't think he looked less badass when he took out the ponytail.
I know.
In my honest opinion, I was just like, you look so much cooler if you would have just finished the kill. And besides, anyways, what if he had turned around while you were doing that? Like, it was so funny. But like, so basically after that scene, they end up taking off. Like, they all freak out because obviously you don't want to deal with police showing up, and then of course they're gonna look over at the bar, and they all take off. I mean, it was a wild time. But yeah, there are the other scenario. There's a couple other scenarios. So we have Johnny Boy, who is shooting a gun on a roof toward the end of the movie. Wild. Okay. Easily one of the scariest things you could do, because you could kill somebody. In fact, he shoots a window from an apartment. what did you think of that scene, and how do you feel you would have approached it? Like similar to what Charlie did, or you're just like,
Oh, no.
I'm done. He's a lost cause. I'm done.
Yeah. I first would have smacked him, across the head, and then grabbed the gun and been like, I'm donezo. Like, I'm not doing this because you're gonna end up getting someone killed, and then we're both in deep shit. But it also kind of shows just like how much Johnny Boy doesn't necessarily care. That he's one of those guys that like flies by the seat of his pants and just hopes that it all kind of works out in the end, or believes that it'll all work out in the end. And that's just one of those guys you definitely don't want around, because he can land you in a ton of trouble. And I was surprised that no one got killed. I think, if I'm not mistaken, he shot the window out and then yelled at the woman who was on the other side of that window. And he was like, yo, I'm sorry, but like kept doing it. And it's like, brother, that's, to quote Bill Engvall, here's your sign. Like, stop fucking shooting shit, brother. Like that's it. You shouldn't be doing this in the first place. Why are you trying to shoot out the light of the Empire State Building? Buddy, you're not that good of a shot. Like, it's very clear. But,
no. And truth be told, I got the reference that you just said about the here's your sign, because I know that was a good one. I don't, and this all happens because he will not own up to his mistake of paying back Michael. All he had to do was show up to the bar with some money, and instead he's self-destructive. His self-destructive nature is like, I got to go do this instead. I mean, I was just like, I don't know. I'll ride with my friends after a while, but there's a point where I'm just like, am I gonna get shot to do this? Like, because then I'm like, I don't know if I want to, because that was crazy. Because I mean, I would probably try to go up to that roof, but then I'm like, this is it. I'm like, dude, either you get your shit together, or I'm not bailing you out. So that was one. Like, there's a lot of scenarios in here, because, like I said, it's kind of a coming of age for Harvey Keitel's Charlie. Which, by the way, it's interesting to me in this movie is Robert De Niro steals the show, but Harvey Keitel is really instrumental in this movie, right? We need him, but it's fascinating to me is that, I don't know if are you a Harvey Keitel fan?
Yeah, for the most part, yeah.
He's so good in this movie, and I'm just curious, why do you think Harvey Keitel never never ended up in the same stratosphere as De Niro? And I get it; it's a better performance as Johnny because he's more entertaining. But Harvey Keitel really is a good leading man, and I don't think we give him enough credit, especially with Mean Streets as an example.
Maybe it's because I don't know if he's broken out genre-wise into other genres. Robert has done that. Robert De Niro not only was like big with the mobster movies, but like once he really started to do a few comedies here and there and stuff like that, that's when he became, like, in my eyes, legendary status of an actor, right? But with Harvey, I don't think he really broke out outside of the atypical mobster movie. But then again, he might have been pigeonholed into that kind of role or that kind of movie in general. So maybe that's it. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, because I think I've became a Harvey Keitel fan in the last like 5 months. I don't know. I've been watching a lot of movies with him, and I go, why is he not bigger? Because like if you look at Taxi Driver, right? They flip the roles. Robert De Niro's the lead, and he plays this pimp in Taxi Driver, and he's really good as this pimp, by the way, because I hated him in the movie. But yeah, it wasn't the same. Like, you know what I mean? Like where Robert De Niro was able to, once again, he steals the show in both movies. And it's just probably because, truth be told, they're both legends, but De Niro is probably a top 10 greatest of all time actor. But I watch Mean Streets, and I always wonder, I don't know if you ever did that. Every time I watch it, I always wonder what if with Harvey Keitel, because I mean, he is so good in this movie. Like, it's like before Pesci shows up, to be De Niro's number 2, it was Harvey Keitel and Robert De Niro. Now I want to talk about something here that drove me nuts in the movie. Is a scenario 3 is Charlie has this relationship with Teresa, which is Johnny Boy's cousin, in secret, because he doesn't want Johnny Boy to know, and also he doesn't want anybody to know because she suffers from epilepsy, which at that time they don't seem to understand that it is a condition, and they think it's just her being sick in the head, which is wild to me. But as we keep talking about, this is a different time. What did you think of that whole situation, especially like the way Uncle Giovanni says, like, if I had my way, the parents listen to me, I'm gonna have her committed because she's sick in the head. Stay away from her.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting conversation to have about disability in general, and like in that time period, because not very many people knew about epilepsy or just a lot of uh mental health things like that. It was not taken seriously. I mean, those of you who may or may not know, disabled people didn't even get rights until 1990. So like, of course, they're not going to take her or her condition seriously because no one really felt like they needed to. If they would have had their way, they would have committed her to an asylum, and that she would have been mistreated to the nth degree if she would have been put in there. She probably would have been shocked a few times here and there, through like shock therapy to try and like what they would consider rewire her brain or whatever. But yeah, their relationship was interesting not only because she was rather contentious with him, and they tried to keep it on the down low because they didn't know how Johnny Boy was going to react, but he also stayed with her despite the epilepsy. So it kind of normalizes uh disabilities a little bit as well. So it has that weird like double-edged sword of how they deal with it in the movie.
Yeah, I think, you know what I think it comes down to. I was wondering this when I saw it this time, was I wonder if Johnny Boy's antics is the reason why people are like look at Teresa as if she's sick in the head, because they look at the way he acts and they like it's a family thing, and I'm like, it's
Yeah.
not a family thing. They're totally Johnny Boy's just an asshole. Like,
Yeah.
Teresa has a condition, and I like their relationship because I felt like there was some good foundation for Charlie. I just it bothered me because we all experience this peer pressure, and we're afraid to express who we love or who we care about, and also who we want to be as a person, because Charlie's constantly conflicted with this, right?
Yeah.
And I have to ask you, is it a smart idea to date your best friend's cousin?
No. Especially if your best friend is Johnny Boy. Like in that situation? Nah. Nah. Nah.
Yeah, no.
Teresa's cute and all, but nah.
And you know what it comes down to for me? I would say no. I would always say no, unless you're going to tell them beforehand, and then you see how that goes. But
like you had that conversation. Like, yeah.
The problem with Johnny Boy is you don't know. He's so unpredictable. He could use that against you at some point. He even kind of throws it out there, like, I'm not going to tell your Uncle Giovanni about it. But you don't know for sure if that was a threat, the way he acted. Yeah, that was one of the most interesting parts of the movie, was his relationship. And then let's talk about, you remember Diane, the dancer in the beginning of the movie? He dances with this beautiful dancer who is black.
Yeah.
And they have a vibe together. Like, you can clearly see there's a vibe, like, and he's having a good time. And when I first saw it, I didn't really think anything of it outside of being like, oh, he must dig her. And then he does dig her, and he does shoot his shot, by the way. He does shoot his shot, but it is so bad that I'm surprised he even was able to get it going, because Mr. Smooth was out the window for Charlie in that one.
Oh, no, that was so cringy.
Yes.
I was like, okay. I was like, I can't watch this.
I don't know. You don't have to answer if you don't want. Have I? I guess the question I'm gonna put out there: have I been, or has either one of us been in there? You don't have to answer. I don't know for sure if I've been in that situation, but I have seen that situation in real time and been like, that's not what we talked about before you went over there. That's not what you said. Like, why did you do that? But she does end up going with him to get Chinese food. She wants Chinese food.
Yeah.
And so he makes this, this date, I guess, to talk about him owning a business and her becoming a hostess, which I did not believe. But, well, I mean, it is kind of true, because he's going to get this restaurant, right? But I'm just like, you just want to hang out with her. He goes into this. Yeah, he goes into this taxi cab. Okay, we can all relate to this in some aspects, but there's a part that I do not agree with. Is he goes into this taxi and he sees her waiting, and he's starting to get nervous, and he's starting to second guess it, and then he decides to tell the taxi guy to take him back to where he picked him up. And there's two reasons what I got from this was, one, he was nervous, and 2, he's so worried about what his uncle and the neighborhood would think if he dated somebody who's not Italian, which is weird to us in 2026 because we're a lot more like I'm a mixed kid, so I really am like
Oh yeah.
kind of like and so that was wild to me. What did you think? Do you think you would have went on that date with Diane? And what did you think about like his conflicts with that
I mean,
situation?
yeah, I would have, but like I can understand, the conflicts given the historical information of that time period, given all that shit. Like, it was still kind of frowned upon for anyone to even have the idea of having some sort of interracial relationship in the 70s at that point. Like, you got to remember, like, integration didn't really happen until the late 60s, like 65, 66-ish. So that's only like a decade removed, right? If you look at when this was released and filmed maybe 2 years prior to that, or like a year prior to that. So, like, there's not a lot of time in between when it was acceptable for people to even be intermingling with each other like that, let alone having the idea of going on a date with someone that is not only outside of your race but also black at that time. But
yeah, I would have went on the date because she was a good dancer, and I'm just like, if she's willing to let me dance like a jackass next to her, and we can do Chinese food, this is a perfect date. Like
Yeah,
the fact
perfect.
that it was so bad the way he asked her that I'm like, she even agreed to go here. You should have done it. But I understand, and this is why I always tell people that we need to have in this time and in 2026. I know that there's films that are not portrayed well. When we look at it now with a different lens, it's like, oh, it's uncomfortable. But we need movies like this. This happens to be a really good movie though. But we need Mean Streets so we can look at this so we don't repeat history. Okay, that's the one thing I think people don't understand is like we need to see these things that we don't agree with, that we're uncomfortable with, because we need to remember how far we've come and how far we have not come, because a lot of this is still prevalent. It's just a different era, and it's concerning. But yeah, I that was one of those scenarios that I'm just like, because it, it would not dawn on me now, but yeah, in the 70s, it was a different vibe. Now I'm trying to see what there's a lot of different things happening in this movie that like it's crazy. Is there anything else that sticks out to you that happened in this movie?
Not that we haven't already kind of hit on, because we've talked about most of the major beats in the movie and kind of, I mean, other than obviously that last scene,
Yeah.
Which again I think is based on something that Marty knew about. I think he got into a car accident, and that's what ultimately kind of stirred this idea in his mind to even write the movie Mean Streets. So like it was partially the reason for the ending of the movie, but then he had to have a reason or a way to tie this all up, and I think he did a pretty good job of doing so with that car accident scene at the very end. But yeah, other than that, I think we've hit pretty much everything.
Yeah, it's when sometimes when you do reviews, you don't know if you're gonna go through the whole movie or you're gonna go. But this way, it's just like you got to focus on all the crazy shit in this movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll talk about that. There's one thing I did want to highlight before we get to this ending is Martin Scorsese as a writer. Like you and I, by the time we're watching his movies in theaters, he's not writing anymore. He's
No.
and in this movie, he co-writes. It's a story by him that he co-writes with another gentleman. I think it was Marin Mardik. I think it was.
Yeah, something like that. I think that's
And it was kind of I don't know about you. It was kind of awesome to see what a Martin Scorsese written kind of movie. He co-writes it like, and it's personal, because I don't think I've ever seen a movie of his where he did write it. And to me, I'm like, he actually is a really good writer along with this co-writer, because I love this story because it was fascinating. Did you like him as a writer? Would you like to see him do it again?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I'm down for anything that Marty does. Just hearing that he produced Die My Love, I was like, hell yeah. Just to even know that he had his hands in something is what piques my interest. Where I'm like, okay, well, if he likes it, then there's got to be a reason, right? Like, if he wrote it, I'm going to like it. If he liked it and is willing to put his money down and put his money where his mouth is, there's got to be a reason, right? Like, he's just one of those guys that, at least in culture and art and film, you want to pay attention to him because he knows what he's talking about. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah, I just picture you and I meeting him and be like, "We'd like you to write again because we saw Main Streets," and he's like, "I'm getting too old for this shit."
Yeah,
you
he's like, guys,
know,
I'm tired.
he's like, "What more can I write? I've already given you majority of my life. Where now I'm just a movie director. There's nothing else going on." But yeah, we'll talk about this ending now because this ending basically it all comes back to Johnny Boy did not pay Michael and is continually blew him off, even though Charlie has tried to fix it by giving him money, setting up meets at the Tony's bar and being the mediator, and it's boiled over to the point where Uncle Giovanni said something in the movie that stayed in my head throughout the rest of it was honorable men. I think he says go with honorable men, which would later come back and to bite Charlie in the ass. But yeah, so basically Michael is fed up and he even visits Teresa. He's like, I need him to show up at this bar. Like he kind of threatens her by knocking her bread down and her groceries. What a man. And he so they're having this it was like a party for a guy in Vietnam, one of their friends, and another time capsule, right? You see what happens with Vietnam, and Johnny Boy does not show up. So we had talked about how he shot the fireworks and everything. They got into it and all that, but eventually Johnny Boy does come to this party, by the way, which is crazy. He comes to this party, and Michael eventually shows up later on, and I'm pretty sure that Charlie gave him $22 so that he would have $30 total to give him. Just say, this is what you have. I call him Charlie Boy. Charlie tries to help him. And when Michael gets to the bar, Johnny Boy gives him $10. And when asked, wait, where's, that's it? And he's like, well, I had to buy drinks for everybody here. I mean, talk about putting gasoline on a fire, dude. I mean, it's insane. And then they get into it where Johnny Boy pulls out a gun. Yeah. Okay. And it escalated where we actually get a cameo. We actually get two cameos in this movie, by the way. Is Martin Scorsese is the hitman and his mom who helps Teresa when she has an episode, and crazy. But yeah, it escalates where Tony has to basically give up their car so Charlie can get Johnny Boy out of the city to avoid what he knows is not, it's pretty much, it's done. Yeah. And then they have to ask Teresa for money. Made me laugh so hard. They need Teresa, and then she has to go with them, and they drive through the city. And by the way, I think there's a lot of humor in this where Charlie doesn't know where he's going.
Yeah, he has no idea.
Yeah, when they get to Brooklyn, he's like, they're all kind of like, what are you doing? You do not know where you're going? And we get to this point where you had talked about where basically Michael and the hitman played by Martin Scorsese show up. And Johnny Boy, let me tell you, what a guy, dude. What a guy. Does not recognize the car, doesn't recognize anything. Sticks his head out, and then he got shot in the neck. And then Martin Scorsese, the hitman, shoots a couple times, and they crash. And if you haven't seen it if you see it for the first time, you don't know what happens. You're kind of just like, holy shit, are they all dead? And then Michael and them leaves. And then, by the way, you know what, Drake, you might be right about that, with adrenaline. Apparently in 70s New York, you get shot, you immediately keep going.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's so funny because you get shot in the carotid artery, and I'm like, brother, dead.
Yes.
You're done. He literally gets shot right here. And like that's the one spot where that's how you check your pulse on your neck. And like 3 squirts, you're done. Like that's it. That's all it takes. That's where, I'm not gonna say who, but that's where a very famous podcaster was hit, and instantaneous. Like it was donezo.
Yeah,
and like it's the same thing. So them drawing that out, I was kind of like, that's kind of hokey and weird. I would have preferred if he would have just been shot, had like the 3, and then just kind of went limp. Like I would have preferred that over, what we got as far as Johnny Boy getting out of the car and walking around.
Yeah, I was convinced he was going to die the first time I saw it, and I was still, to this day, when I watch it, I love the ending, but I still think he should have died. To just hone in on the fact for Charlie's full development, like, you fuck around, you don't hang out with honorable men, this is what happens, and now you grow up. And then, like, what happens with Teresa, I thought Teresa died, by the way, too. The way her hand is in that, and then turns out she's okay, and then Charlie, and then it just kind of flashes back to different characters, and it ends. And I remember just my jaw dropped because when I saw it in theaters, it hits so differently in a theater that you're just like, holy shit! Like, on any given day in New York, shit can go wild, and you should always pay your debts. But yeah, I agree with you, Johnny. I think Johnny dying would send the message. I don't think he's redeemable. To be honest, I can't see this because I think he's going to end up dying anyway, even if he survives it. But yeah, that was were you expecting that to go the way it did? Like when you first saw it, like did you think that was how it was going to go out?
No, I didn't know where to go or where it was going to go. I was just kind of along for the ride. And yeah, I was kind of shocked at the way that it ended, and I was also kind of like pleased with it as well in a way, because I was like, oh, we're going out on a high note, and then it just cuts credits. Like that feeling of like that just kind of drop that you get at the end like that is kind of cool at times. It doesn't always work out, but for someone like Marty Scorsese, it's always going to work out. So yeah, it was kind of nice to have that little adrenaline dump at the end of the movie where you're just like, whoa, like what did I just watch?
Yeah, and I know some people don't like those kind of endings, but I'm just curious, what did you take away from that ending? Like, what is your final thought of that movie? Like, with the way that went down, like, what did you think was
I literally audibly said, all right. I was like, okay. It's like, hell yeah. Like, good movie. It's long as fuck, but it's good.
Yeah.
Because it's like 2 hours long, but it's really good.
Yeah, my assessment was you need to really think about who you associate with. That was the first thing that came to my mind. Yeah, like I was just like, when you're young, you don't realize that sometimes you put yourself in really bad situations, and that this is what happens when you play with fire. But by the way, is that funny? I guess that's a play on what happens in the movie. Is Harvey Keitel's Charlie keeps playing with the fire, and he literally got burnt that time. That's what happens when, yeah, but it's a great ending. So I loved it. I just wish Johnny died because, like, I agree with you because it's unbelievable. The amount of blood he has, I was just like, that's insane. Like, he should have just passed out as soon as he got out. It was
literally an inhuman amount of blood, and I was just like, that's literally too much. That was more. He squirted out more blood than famous podcaster did whenever he died.
Yeah, exactly. And here we go. This is what I really want to know is, out of 100%, what would you rate Mean Streets?
92, 93-ish.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. I gave it a 91. I mean, to me, it's hard because it is a definitive Scorsese film. Like, I would agree with you when you said that. But there are some other ones that I love a little bit more. So that's why, like, it's funny. 91 to me, I'm like, is that too low? But then I'm like, you got to think of every other movie that I love about him. And I named all the ones I really love by him, and they're all in the 90s bracket. There's one thing that I didn't bring up, and I wanted to ask you. This was a crazy scenario to me, and this is something that people need to be wary of. Is remember when those two kids are buying fireworks from Tony and Michael, and they basically say they have $40, and they get into a car with random guys. I mean, we know Tony and Michael because of the audience, but like, you don't know these guys. You're in the wrong part of New York. And then basically they try to pay with check, by the way. That made me laugh so hard because we live in a different era.
Yeah.
And they end up giving him money, and they get out of the car, and he's like, hey, just wait, we'll be right back. Somebody's going to give you the fireworks. It'll take a little bit. And they end up scamming these kids, and they go to the movies, by the way. And I wanted to ask you, do you think that you want fireworks that badly? You think if the guy's like, I need you guys to get in the car, we're going to go here, are you getting into that car?
Not fireworks.
Not for fireworks?
Not fireworks.
What could get you in the car?
I've done it for other things. I've done it for, like, I mean, obviously, like, there's pot and there's alcohol, like, it happens.
That it's funny. I'm over here like, that's insane. But then again, it's like, I would do the same thing if it went to somebody's house. I'm comfortable with going into somebody's house, but for some reason, a vehicle is where I'm like, no, thank you. Because I don't know. I'm convinced that, like, they could attack me. I don't know. But yeah, that was wild. You'll never see that again, like something like that. And by the way, did you see the way those movie popcorns look? Can you imagine? That was probably what, 25 cents? That would be, how much would that be today? That little sneaky popcorn.
Like $10.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, and I forgot to bring that up because that made me laugh so hard was the fireworks. I would just go buy sparklers. I would not be in the car with somebody. So now
No.
that we give Mean Streets the review, let me ask you these questions. Is this a top film? Would you put this in a list of top films in the 70s?
I would put it in a list of most influential films of the 70s. I wouldn't necessarily put it. I don't know if I'd put it in the top 10 of like the best films of the 70s, but probably the most influential. Because if it wasn't for Mean Streets, like I said in the beginning of this, we wouldn't have literally everything else by Martin Scorsese.
Yeah, and with Robert De Niro and Harvey Keitel showing up, too as well. So, same question: if you did a list for top Harvey Keitel movies, would this be in the list?
I mean, yeah. As far as Harvey Keitel goes, yes, because it's a little more insulated, I think you would say. Obviously, Reservoir Dogs is going to be up there as well.
Yeah.
But I think Mean Streets easily is going to be up at least in the top 10.
Yeah, it's because there's a difference between top and definitive. I would definitely think you agree with me. Definitive Harvey Keitel movie because it's probably one of his best led films. Now let's move over to his co-star Robert De Niro. Is this a definitive Robert De Niro film?
Well, I mean, it has to be because it's literally what defined his career, right? It's
Yeah,
literally like if you look at the word definitive and look at its definition, it's literally one of the most definitive movies the man has ever done because it is what made him Robert De Niro. So just by understanding what the word definitive means, it would have to be.
Thank you. Somebody was listening to this podcast, like, what does definitive mean? And he just broke it down to you. But it's funny. You could show this movie to somebody who loves Robert De Niro, and they would argue with you that is not a definitive movie because they're so used to everything that's come after it. And you could explain it to them like, without this, we don't get Taxi Driver. And they're like, no, Taxi Driver is his definitive movie. And I'm like,
no,
whatever,
buddy.
Now here's a question about the hidden gems of cinema because this is considered it, in my opinion. Is why do you think that Martin Scorsese's Mean Streets isn't as popular nor mentioned among his best movies, despite being highly influential, not only as his filmmaking style and what would come, also it's one of the best independent films made ever, too.
Right. I think honestly it would come down to how do I word this? At least within the film Twitter community, within the online film community, I would say that his relevancy with younger audiences has hit recently as of like Wolf of Wall Street, right? And there's not very many that venture back to his older stuff. The only people that would make the argument that his older stuff is what makes him famous are either the ones who finally did go back and watch his older things or grew up watching it in the theaters to begin with. So I think not a lot of people are going back to watch the older movies unless they were already there whenever they released in the first place. Unless they're like you and me and they're trying to watch older films from other filmmakers to kind of see their evolution and see how they became what they became.
Yeah, that's actually a really good answer because it's weird to me because like on film Twitter, because we're both on that's how we met. I see people talk about After Hours left and right. Okay,
it's so funny because I just released an episode on After Hours.
Yes, that's why I brought it literally because I see it everywhere. Everyone loves it and everyone's is talking about it. And I think to myself, because I have a very interesting take on After Hours. Is I'm just like I would totally take Mean Streets over After Hours any day of the week. Personally, myself, I understand why people like After Hours. But if you thought I was frustrated with Johnny Boy, imagine my frustrations with that other, with Griffin Dunn's character. And I kind of felt bad for him, but yeah, I just wonder why After Hours gets all this. And I'm not complaining. It is an entertaining movie, and it changed a lot for Martin Scorsese as well. Like I said, another movie that really kickstarted his resurgence in his love for filmmaking. But I always wonder why Mean Streets never gets mentioned. Like if you're in the Criterion Closet, right? You get the opportunity to be in there. I get to watch your video, and I'll answer as well. Would Mean Streets be a movie you would pick out?
Well, the average amount of movies that people pick out, and they allow you to pick out because you do have to pay for them and everything. So like, it's a concept of how much I'm willing to spend.
Okay, hold on here. I'll change it. You are invited to go to the closet. There is no limit. They allow you to take whatever you want. Because I know they do this. Because I've seen what they show versus what somebody picked, and somebody went to town one time.
Oh yeah, there's been plenty of people that have gone fucking crazy apeshit. But I don't know if Main Streets is necessarily one of the ones that I pick out of the closet because there are other things in that collection that spoke to me a little bit more, either on a personal level or just in general. Like all that jazz is getting picked up immediately. Things like that, things that have thoroughly enjoyed. Not to say that I haven't enjoyed Mean Streets, but I don't know if it's one of the ones that I pick up right away. If I have, some room or can justify picking it up for like the sake of the video, if I'm presenting to Criterion, these are the things that I'm picking up. I don't think so. Yeah, because I think there are other things in that collection that speak to me a little more than Mean Streets does, as far as for personal reasons. Because a lot of the times, the people that go in there to make their the decisions, a lot of their decisions are driven by personal or professional means, either by working with someone who created that property or that film, or something that touched them in a way to get them to become an actor or a director or a writer or whatever. So I don't know if Mean Streets would be one that I pick up in that regard.
No, no, that's not a bad. That I get the answer. If I'm in the Criterion closet, it gets picks, and this is me picking Martin Scorsese's Mean Streets, because if you ever want to know what the original definition of a fuckboy is, watch Robert De Niro's Johnny Boy, because this is exactly what you're gonna get.
Yeah.
Now I will ask you that same question though, but they tell you in the video, they say you got to pick one Martin Scorsese movie from the collection. Now with that choice, you have to pick one. Would Mean Streets be the one you choose? Or would it be something else?
Okay, well, now you're really putting me on the spot. All right, so now you're really putting me on the spot.
Because I know After Hours is in there.
Yeah, I know.
I know Killers of the Flower Moon's in there.
Yeah, but those are like the only three. So if I had to choose, I mean, there's not very many that are actually in the Criterion closet, other than like The Irishman and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, that one too. Yeah.
Yeah, I probably, if I had to choose one, then yeah. If I was put to gunpoint and like, hell yeah, you're gonna have to choose a Marty movie, then yeah, I'd pick it. But if I had free reign, it probably wouldn't be, one of the ones I pick.
Hell yeah. And that concludes Mean Streets. And this is what you get when you come on my podcast, asking you the most ridiculous questions. It's so ridiculous what I'll ask. But thank you so much for coming on. And I'm happy that you chose this, because I love Mean Streets, and I didn't know if anybody would choose it. So it's kind of fun to do this, because you let me go back in time to it when I first saw this and being like, whoa, like where was this at? When I was watching Wolf of Wall Street, this is awesome. I love Wolf of Wall Street. But thank you so much for coming on. And where can they find you, Drake? On Letterboxd, Twitter, and also your podcast, The First Watch.
Yeah, so everything is going to be connected to, it should all be connected to my Twitter. If you just find it on Twitter, there should be a link tree there for everything, including the Instagram page. But mostly just like Twitter, as I think the actual @ is Average Film Guy, but the username is Average Film Dude. You can find it there. And then obviously the First Watch podcast, pretty much anywhere that you get your podcasts. I think it's pretty much pushed out to everywhere that you can get your podcasts. So yeah.
I've been begging him to change his name on Twitter.
I can't. I tried.
I
but then again, like the average film. No, I'm keeping it. Like I've at this point, like people know me like on Twitter at this point as that, so I'm gonna keep it as that.
True.
I'm not gonna change it, for the sake of it. Plus, like later on down the line, if I end up having a production company, Average Dude Production sounds pretty good to me. So
yeah,
might as well,
it's just it's just a running gag with him, because I don't think he has he's average. Truly, I speak to Average a lot. But thank you so much for coming on, and we do hope that you'll come back whenever you want to.
Of course.
Thank you so much, Drake, for coming on to the podcast. And if you haven't already, folks, please check out The First Watch podcast. It's one of the best podcasts out there in terms of movies, and you will check out so many films if you actually go through with him on each episode, and it's fun conversation. And I'm going to link, of course, the 2 episodes we did. So if you enjoy our conversations on my podcast, definitely go over to his, because we did Bong Joon-ho's Mother and Agnes Varda's Les Bonheur, and it's incredible stuff. And there's something else coming in the works too, so stay tuned for that. But I can't thank him enough. Like I said, he's a real dear friend. We've went from awesome Twitter mutual to podcasting. He's become a very good friend of mine, and I appreciate him very much. So definitely give him a follow on Twitter as well, and make sure you check out the First Watch podcast. But that is it, folks, for this episode. This is the end. So if you haven't already, wherever you're at the podcast world, wherever you listen to our show, Tomorrow Comes Movies, make sure you hit the follow button. On the YouTube side, if you're watching the video version on YouTube, make sure you hit the subscribe and the bell notification to stay up to date when new episodes drop. YouTube.com/TOC Movies. And on social media, that's where you can really figure out what's coming soon. @TOC Movies. We're on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Threads. Make sure you give us a follow there, and I tease everything there. And definitely let me know what you guys are thinking of the episodes. I'd love to hear some more feedback. And what else? Oh, if you would like to be a part of the show, I know I had said in the intro I'm taking a 2 to 3 week hiatus, but if you're interested in the show, I've reached out to you prior, or haven't already and you're interested, just send me a DM and we'll talk from there. I'd love to have anybody come on. And, as I always say, this is a video and audio podcast, but if you're not comfortable, you can still come onto the show. As some of you have tuned into the episodes, you see that sometimes they're just audio versions only, but I will see you during the recording, unless you don't turn on your camera. That has happened too. But just know that only the audio versions will come out. But yeah, anyways, welcome. As long as I know you, you're an awesome Twitter mutual. Let's do it. So that is it. I am the Patric, your host. Until next time, stay tuned for another episode of Tomorrow Comes Movies.